Hello everyone. Today I'll continue the story of Singlemother Dieu Hân. That morning, Han woke with a start while the world outside was still dim. The sound of a rooster crowing in the distance mingled with the last chirps of nighttime insects, creating a brief hush before the day began. The early mist hung thick, clinging in droplets to the blades of grass along the roadside. Han stepped out of bed, her heart full of resolve. She knew today was important, the day she and An would bring everything they knew to the police station, hoping their information might help catch those who had filled their lives with fear. Before leaving, Han carefully gathered her handwritten notes, piecing together every memory of the incident she had forced herself to recall through the night. At the gate, An was already waiting, her face still showing traces of fatigue but her eyes alight with hope. They exchanged a brief nod, then walked briskly down the dirt road toward town. The morning air was fresh, yet the stillness made their footsteps sound unusually loud. What they didn't know was that, hidden among the thick roadside grass, a figure was crouched low, blending almost seamlessly into the dark green backdrop. He stood motionless, even controlling his breathing, his blade-sharp eyes following their every move. An kept her gaze fixed ahead, while Han focused on telling her friend what she planned to say to the police, completely unaware of the cold, predatory stare shadowing their steps. He wasn't in any rush, as though simply waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As soon as they set foot at the police station gate, Han and An were greeted by an officer on duty. He led them down a long corridor that carried the faint mustiness of old paperwork, into a reception room tucked away in the corner of the courtyard. Inside, the cold white light from a fluorescent tube shone directly onto a large wooden table, casting the shadows of two chairs onto the worn tile floor. The air was so still that they could clearly hear the rustle of papers from the next room. An was invited to sit first. She walked slowly to the chair, her shoulders drawn in as though bearing an invisible weight. Her hand absently rubbed the hem of her shirt, and she took a deep breath, as if gathering every last ounce of courage she had. When she began to speak, her voice was steady, but there was still a flicker of unease in her eyes. Each word came out as if pulled from a memory still raw with scars. The moment two strange men appeared out of nowhere, lunging forward to slam her to the ground, the ropes biting into her wrists and ankles, her entire body shoved into a heavy sack that reeked of damp fabric and dust, the air inside stifling and close. Then came the image of the abandoned house, etched vividly in her mind. For stained, mildewed walls, a low, cold ceiling, the pungent stench of mold hanging thick in the air, and darkness so dense it seemed to swallow every escape. An told them she had been trembling, her knees weak, but her survival instinct refused to let her collapse. She listened intently for any sound, any pause, until she realized her guard had grown careless. In that fleeting moment, she bolted, running headlong into the pitch-black night, weaving through twisting, narrow trails with no idea where they led, only knowing she had to get as far from that house as possible. When an officer asked what happened next, An slowly recounted the following morning. As the first rays of sunlight pierced through the bamboo grove, she staggered along a deserted dirt road, her stomach gnawing with hunger, her mouth dry. Just then she spotted a young woman hurrying to the market, a swinging bag at her side, who accidentally dropped her wallet. An immediately bent down to pick it up and called out. The woman turned Thursday, her round, kind face and wide eyes showing a flash of surprise as she received the wallet back. They exchanged a few quick words by the roadside, and when Thursday learned that An was looking for the way to Han's house, she nodded without hesitation. By sheer coincidence, Thursday already knew Han, and without a second thought, she led An straight there. Once at the house, the three of them sat down together, conversation slowly becoming more relaxed. Thursday, noticing An's gaunt frame and pale, worn-out face, leaned in and said warmly, "Just stay here and rest. I'll go to the market in a bit and get something good to cook, help you regain your strength. Don't worry about anything." The gentle tone in Thursday's voice was like a warm current seeping into Anna's weary mind. easing some of the fear and strain she had carried for days. In that moment, Thursday's presence felt like a lifeline tossed to her in a storm. But outside, where the late afternoon sunlight had just touched the tips of the grass, a pair of eyes still watched in silence. Hidden among the thick bushes, a figure stood motionless, breathing slow and deep, as if waiting for the perfect moment to move. The escape that had seemed over was, in truth, only the beginning of the next chapter in a storm yet to come. Outside, the courtyard was sprinkled with golden patches of sunlight filtering through the leaves. Yet hidden within that seemingly peaceful scene was a lurking danger. A shadow moved slowly, almost blending into the shifting interplay of light and shade. It was the curly-haired kidnapper. His gaunt face and high cheekbones, casting sharp angles, made even more menacing under the mottled light. His eyes were bloodshot, not only from sleepless days but from the madness of a man cornered. His hair was a greasy, sweat-soaked tangle, clumped into stiff curls like coarse rope. His breathing was quick and heavy, on the verge of breaking into gasps, but he forced himself to stay quiet, moving with the stealth of a wildcat stalking prey. In his sleeve he concealed a small knife, cold, ready to be drawn at any moment to subdue his target. He lingered at the window for a long moment, eyes sweeping over every corner like a seasoned hunter. The door was unlocked. A narrow opening, just enough for him to slip through without a sound. In a flash, his shadow slid inside, moving light and fast like smoke. Within seconds, he was beside the bed. A rough, sweat and tobacco-scented hand clamped suddenly over Anna's mouth. The shock jolted her awake, eyes wide, body thrashing. Her small fingers clawed and gripped at his arm, desperately trying to make space to breathe, but her strength was no match for his iron hold. "Shut up!" he snarled through clenched teeth, his voice hoarse from strain and exhaustion. Anne could only let out a few muffled cries, her vision blurring in panic. He dragged her from the bed, his steps quicker now but still cautious, muttering curses under his breath. At the door, he stooped to grab a fist-sized rock and pressed it hard against her temple, his tone ice-cold. "Make another sound and I'll crush your skull." The area was deathly still, not a soul in sight. Anne knew that once he got her out of the alley, her chances of survival would be slim. She struggled hard, stomping against the ground, but his grip only tightened. Not far away, on the narrow lane beside the house, Ton and Zan were walking by. Ton, tall, broad-shouldered, his skin tanned from years of labor, had a sharp ear for unusual sounds. When he caught the faint, muffled cry, he stopped abruptly, turning his head, his gaze sharpening. "Zan, did you hear that? Someone's calling out," he said urgently, and without waiting for a reply, he sprinted toward Han's house. The door was ajar. Inside, the room was empty, blankets and pillows strewn across the floor. Ton narrowed his eyes, his heartbeat thundering like a war drum. "Something's happened," he growled. They split up to search. Ton rounded to the back, scanning quickly through the foliage. And then he saw him, the curly-haired man, crouched low, pinning on tightly in his arms, hidden in the thick brush just a few steps away but perfectly concealed from view. Anha mettehan his eyes. In that split second, she summoned every bit of strength left in her and bit down hard on his arm. He roared in pain, releasing her on reflex. Ton lunged like a tiger, seizing his collar and yanking him back. The man fought wildly, swinging the knife toward Ton, but Ton, long accustomed to dangerous encounters, dodged and rammed his shoulder into the man's chest, sending them both crashing to the ground. The kidnapper writhed, clawing to break free, but Tana's grip was like steel clamps. They rolled in the dirt, dust rising around them. Just then Dan came running, and without a word, he grabbed the man's legs, pinning them down. After a fierce struggle, they forced him face down, ripped the knife from his hand, and bound him with an old rope. The curly-haired man panted heavily, his chest heaving, eyes still blazing with hatred. Ton, sweat streaming down his temple, breathed hard but never loosened his hold for even a second. "You're not getting away this time," he said, his voice low and firm. They hauled him to his feet and marched him straight to the police station. Though Anne was now safe, she was trembling all over, her eyes red and lashes wet, knowing she had just come within a breath of not making it back alive. After finishing their statements at the police station, Han, Anne, and I stepped out through the gate, feeling both relieved and weighed down by an unshakable unease. Unloading everything we knew to the authorities had eased some of the burden, but the shadow of the remaining kidnapper still hovered over us like a dark cloud. We could only hope that our information would help the police track him down quickly and end these days of constant fear. By late afternoon, the sunlight had faded into a pale gold, casting thin streaks across the village road. The shadows of roadside trees stretched long and twisted, like bony arms reaching out. Yet behind this seemingly peaceful scene, a chilling undercurrent lingered. The remaining kidnapper, the one who had slipped away last time, was tailing our every step. His face was gaunt, cheekbones protruding, eyes burning with a wild, hateful light. His teeth ground together, hands clenched tight as though ready to crush something. In his mind, one thought played on repeat. "You've cut off my way out. I'll drag one of you down with me." With no accomplices left and nowhere to hide, he had chosen the most desperate path, taking one of us hostage. He kept just close enough to maintain sight, yet far enough to avoid detection. At a fork in the road, we stopped to decide which way to go. I suggested we stick together for safety, but Anne, worried about putting Han and her child in danger, told me to take them home first while she stayed behind to pick up a few things. It was in that split second that a dark figure shot out from the roadside thicket like an arrow. He lunged forward, seizing Anne's arm in a vice-like grip, yanking her into a narrow alley while growling hoarse threats. Anne struggled in panic, her feet scraping against the ground as she was dragged backward. Just when it seemed hopeless, Han, who should have already been on her way home, reappeared. In her hands was a bamboo stick she had snatched up from the roadside. Her eyes were cold as steel, her face set with grim determination. She charged, swinging the stick in rapid succession, each blow landing hard on his back and shoulders with a sharp whip in the empty alley. The dry, cracking sound of impact mixed with the ragged breathing of both attacker and defender. He was forced to release Anne, but his rage flared even hotter. The two women didn't hesitate, they bolted. The heavy footsteps thudding behind them made it clear he was still chasing. Han and Anne exchanged a glance, then split at another junction, Han sprinting toward the main road while Anne veered off in the opposite direction to throw him off. Han ran, shouting for help. On the road ahead, a car screeched to a halt as she waved frantically. The door swung open. It was Hui, an old acquaintance of Han's. Without a moment's pause, Hui scooped up little Tom and placed him in the back seat before turning to face the oncoming kidnapper. Popping open the trunk, he grabbed a steel rod and launched himself at the attacker. The powerful strikes made the man falter. Han darted around to the side, joining Hui to restrain him. In the struggle, Han suddenly grabbed the man's collar and froze. Beneath the wrinkled, filthy fabric was a long scar running across his collarbone. Shape was too familiar. Exactly like the scar of someone she thought she would never see again. That moment of shock cost her her advantage. The man roared, shoving Han hard aside, then dashed into the alley. Hui gave chase, his footsteps echoing between cold concrete walls. But when he reached the end, the man was gone, vanished into thin air. Hui returned, panting, his eyes a mix of frustration and concern. Han stood motionless, the bamboo stick still clenched in her grip, her mind swirling with questions. If that really was someone she once knew, why had he become a kidnapper? And that scar, was it mere coincidence? Or the key to a secret powerful enough to change everything? Hui called out a few more times, his voice growing more urgent, echoing through the damp, narrow alley. From its shadowy end, two figures finally emerged. Han stepped out first, staggering like someone who had just escaped a nightmare. Her face was pale, lips trembling, hair tangled and matted with sweat and dust. Behind her, Han was in no better shape. Clothes disheveled, breath uneven, beads of hot sweat running down her cheeks, mingling with tears not yet wiped away. Without a word, the two rushed into each other's arms. The embrace was so tight it felt like they were making sure the other was truly alive, truly still there. Their hearts pounded, not only from the run but from the fear and tension that still gripped them. Han leaned her forehead against Han's shoulder, sobs breaking through in short bursts, while Han gently rubbed her friend's back, murmuring words of comfort, her own voice trembling. Hui walked over, his eyes a mix of worry and relief. Without asking more, he opened the car door, signaling for them to get in. As the engine started and the steady hum filled the air, it seemed to smooth the chaos in their hearts, though no one was truly at ease. "Are either of you hurt?" Hui asked, his voice low but tense. Han only shook her head, unable to speak. Han answered for her, then slowly recounted everything. From leaving the police station to the stalking, the sudden attack, the breathless chase, and the final struggle. With each detail, Hui's brow furrowed deeper. Now and then, his eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, as if checking whether the man was still following them. "Too dangerous, and he got away," he muttered, tightening his grip on the steering wheel. In the back seat, Han still clung to Han's arm, as if it were her only anchor. Han sat unusually silent, eyes fixed on the window. The streetlights blurred into long golden streaks as they passed. Amid that dim glow, the image of a tattoo on the kidnapper's neck flashed vividly in her mind. Too familiar. Familiar enough to make her shiver. It was identical to a tattoo she had once seen on someone very close to her. But the memory was hazy, like a shadow behind a thin curtain. Close enough to touch, yet impossible to grasp. Maybe I saw it wrong. Han tried to reassure herself, but her quickening heartbeat told her this was no coincidence. Hui broke the silence. "Lucky I happened to pass by this time, or else," he trailed off, smiling faintly through the rearview mirror. Han forced a small smile and nodded. "I really do thank you. Every time I'm in trouble, you're there. I feel so lucky." Hui just cleared his throat, slowing the car to avoid a pothole. The tension in the air eased slightly as the three exchanged small talk to fill the heavy silence. Little Tom nestled into his mother's arms, his small hand clutching Han's shirt, eyes still a bit dazed but calmer now. The car rolled through familiar streets, its wheels humming over rain-scented pavement. Yet in Han's mind, that tattoo was etched as if in permanent ink. She knew it was only a matter of time before she had to face that memory, a memory that could change everything she believed about the kidnapper, and about someone from her past she had never dared to suspect.
Xin chào mọi người, lại là mình đây. Vậy là hành trình giải cứu Ánh đã kết thúc. May mắn rằng Ánh và Hân đã gặp được Huy trên đường chạy trốn, nên đã được Huy cứu. Nhưng bí ẩn đằng sau hình xăm trên cổ tên bắt cóc là gì? Liệu rằng tên bắt cóc còn lại có phải là người quen của Hân hay không? Thì mời mọi người đón xem ở video tiếp theo nha. Ở những video tiếp theo sẽ hé lộ những tình tiết mới về tên bắt cóc còn lại. Và để không bỏ lỡ video mới nhất, mọi người nhớ like, share, bật chuông thông báo để nhận thông báo khi mình đăng video mới nhất nha. Mọi người nhớ để lại bình luận ở dưới phần bình luận để cho mình có thêm ý kiến và có thêm động lực để làm những video mới nhất. Cảm ơn mọi người đã xem hết video của mình. Rất mong được mọi người ủng hộ kênh của mình. Xin chào và hẹn gặp lại mọi người.